Hey everyone, Joe here. This is a response video to something Callie just posted, which I asked her to, and I'm kind of excited because it was a book. So the video that Callie made was about kind of a critique of a book called Refusing to be a Man by John Stoltenberg. And I just wanted to tell a little story about how that book kind of came into my life and impacted my life. And it's, I don't even remember it. Obviously it's been so long since I read it, but I remember the impact it having on my life. So in 1994, I moved to the Canadian Arctic, to a town called Iqaluit, which is now in a territory called Nunavut in Canada. But at the time it was still the Northwest Territories, because it only became a territory in 1999. So in 1994, when I was living there, it was Northwest Territories. And I worked at Iqaluit Centennial Library. I think I only worked 10 hours a week, but I would, I was the only person in a little tiny small town library, so I would shelve books or sometimes shelf read, just peruse the bookshelves and make sure they're in Dewey Decimal Order. And I found this book called Refusing to be a Man, and I don't remember what drew me to it or what made me read it, but once I got reading it, I could not tear myself away from it. And it blew my mind. I remember thinking it was phenomenally good. Now, I was 22 years old. I'm now 38, so this is 16 years ago I read this book. And I think the most poignant part was just on the back, when you read who John Stoltenberg was, remember, this is before the internet, when you couldn't really Google things and check his Wikipedia page. There was just some casual mention of the fact that he was partners with Andrea Dworkin. I knew nothing about her, never even heard of her before that. But apparently, I think the book may have even said that he was a gay man and she was a lesbian, but that they were either married or living together sort of as a married couple, insofar as they were a partnership. And they were both feminist authors, like extreme radical feminist authors. And I don't know why they would consider themselves married if they were gay and lesbian, but whatever. And I remember, again, back then, not having words to describe what I was or what was going on. I remember thinking this was quite fascinating, especially a male feminist. I don't think anybody had heard of such a thing. So I read Pornography, I think was the name of the first book by Dworkin, and then I couldn't get enough of her. There were several of her books that I read in quick succession in this little Arctic town. You can imagine, lapping up radical feminism. Dworkin's book really demonizes pornography. The book is called Pornography, and it's all about how pornography is harmful to women under all circumstances. And it's a very riveting read, and it's a very good argument, to the point that I believed her. And I still, to some extent, do believe her. I still do believe that pornography is a lot worse than, just, especially with the advent of so much of it and so easily available. And but she takes it to this extreme level where I think I do remember one part where she's calling the vagina a sheath. I think that's the actual definition of the word, and that the penis is a knife, and that the knife has to go in the sheath, and that she was using very violent imagery to describe just human body functions. And it really played on my young, impressionable mind. It really did. I don't know here we are 16 years later, I don't even know what to say about either of those books, because I'm too far removed from them. I don't remember the details, and I don't know if I would agree with them or disagree with them. Callie made a lot of really excellent points in her video, which was that it's very binary oriented, and it doesn't take into account a genderqueer way of living or thinking, which I really appreciate that idea, because I do identify as genderqueer, and I don't. I remember reading that book and getting very angry at men, and then getting very angry at women for what I always called participating in their own oppression. Callie said something else in the video, using something similar to that phrase, where men, if they behave in a masculine way, it comes off as oppressive, whereas if women behave in a feminine way, it doesn't necessarily mean they are participating in their own oppression. I thought that was a really poignant point. And what it made me think of was a nature documentary, that movie Planet Earth. I love Planet Earth. If you haven't seen it, seriously, get it. Go see it. It's 10 parts of just, fish in the ocean and birds in the trees and monkeys in the jungle. But they really take a very interesting look at how animals behave, how the world around us just behaves naturally. And I hate to use the word naturally because when you're talking nature, you know, in nature, pretty much everything is all about reproduction all the time. And as a genderqueer person, you know, I don't even know that it's a genderqueer person, but I don't want to be a mother. I don't have any desire to reproduce, which puts me squarely in the category of unnatural. Side note, I was just talking to a lady at work today about, we're talking about taking the birth control pill through, which I do. I take several packs back to back to avoid having to menstruate. And she didn't understand how it worked. And I said, well, your body is constantly in a state of preparing for pregnancy. And that when you take the pill, it adjusts your hormonal levels so that you think you're already pregnant and then you don't produce, you know, like the uterine lining that is conducive to a fertilized egg sticking to it and all this stuff. And it was kind of funny because I was saying, you know, your body really does want to be pregnant. And that kind of makes me laugh because socially and logically, I don't think that way. But physically, I think that's what my body wants. Because I did go off the pill that 1 week for a month, and I ovulated for 1 month for the first time in probably 10 years. And I had an extremely ramped up sex drive, which was very strange to me. But it was very much like my 38-year-old body was wanting one last kick at the can to get pregnant. That's what it wanted to do. And I've had my tubes tied anyway. I can't, but it was a strange phenomenon. Anyway, when you said participating in your own oppression, it got me thinking about how animals in the jungle behave in what is naturally a masculine way. And that doesn't mean oppressing the female of the species. It usually means, well, I guess you could put violence into it. It usually means like poofing out the chest and acting cocky and arrogant and in a way to attract a female or in a way to encourage, you know, to look better than the other males in the name of getting a pair bond partner and in the name of reproduction, right? In the name of having sexual intercourse so you can propagate the species. And I just think that's really interesting, that in nature, the male of the species is always kind of acting arrogant and poofing, showing its plumage, loud cat calls, this type of thing. And I don't think those things in and of themselves are oppressive or violent, but I think they're masculine qualities. And it's funny because I always call myself a peacock. I always kind of act that way, and I do consider it a masculine way of acting. And I like being this way. I don't like being meek. And that's the other thing in these documentaries. Just checking my time here. In these documentaries, a lot of the females of the species are usually beige or dark brown. The animal is very meek colored. It's not bright like the male of the species. And the female, usually, it's funny, they act shy or whatever. Like they'll put their head down, they'll kind of look up, and they'll walk around like they're not interested, where the male is prancing around trying to get the attention of the female. And I just think that's so strange. And yet it occurs time and time and time again in nature. A lot of species behave that way. The female behaves meek and shy, and the male behaves aggressive and egotistical or whatever. So I always think of masculine and feminine in terms of nature, and I try and think of those behaviors as being the natural way that the males and the females of the species behave. I guess it doesn't really take into account genderqueerdom, but I'd love to explore genderqueerdom in species other than human. That'd be very interesting, because I'm sure it exists. You just don't hear about it, right? Anyhow, I'm going to wrap this up and make my genderqueer chat video next. So, good. Thank you, Callie, for making this video, because I was dying of curiosity. It has been 16 years since I read the book, and I don't even know. I'd like to read it again, obviously, to see what I would think now. I just remember that it was a seminal book in my life at that time, changed my thinking so much, and it was in a small town Arctic library that I found it. And anyway, thanks again. See you later.